That's good.
That all makes sense. Okay, well, let's start with something that's on my mind. Is the season is over, and it's been over now for a few weeks for some, maybe longer for others. And I'm curious what it's like to be away from the team in the way that you would normally, be with the team, to be away from the pool in the way you normally would be at the pool. Even if you're still swimming, it's certainly got to be different. So Jake, let me start with you. What's it been like these last few weeks now that the season's over for you? What's been good about it? Maybe what's been hard about it?
One thing for me is definitely just finding ways to fill the extra time in my week and more specifically in my days. You spend so much time throughout the course of the season dedicating hours and hours to training and recovery and sleeping and eating well. That once that is all taken off your shoulders, it's kind of like, what am I supposed to do with this time now? So at first it's really nice, just getting away from that kind of weekly grind. And at first it's super nice, but definitely lately it's been a lot harder, just trying to figure out what to do with myself. But I'm sure,
Yeah.
I know I'm a junior, so I can definitely, and I look forward to getting back in the water my senior year, but I'm sure that Millie and Kelly can kind of touch more upon not being able to go back to true competitive swimming after this year.
Yeah, that's a good point. So you all have a similar experience of not being with the team formally anymore, but for Kelly and for you, Millie, it's maybe significantly different. Kelly, maybe you could speak to that. What's it been like for you these last few weeks?
I gotta be honest, especially initially, it was extremely difficult. Nothing about it was really easy. I thought leading into my last meet, I was like, you know what, maybe life's gonna be kind of nice when this ends. I'm so consumed right now by worrying, am I sleeping enough? Am I napping? Am I taking the elevator? Even just tiny decisions to keep my recovery up. But it was I was like, okay, well, maybe it'll be nice not to have the stress. But I kind of just found myself with more of an emptiness sort of when it initially ended. And I was like, I miss everyone. I miss my teammates. I miss worrying about something that I was so passionate about. And now it just isn't in my life anymore. So it was definitely a big void that I've now kind of come accustomed to. But definitely initially I was like, where do I go from here? This was the one thing that kind of gave me a sense of purpose, and it kind of just was abruptly ended,
Yeah, wow. No, I can feel that all the way over here. Millie, you were nodding your head. Is something similar for you? Similar experience?
Yeah, I guess my kind of difference between both Kelly and Jake is that swimming was the reason I came to this country in the first place. And my entire life has been revolved around that for the last 5 years that I've been in this country. So kind of losing that was me trying to work out who I am without it. And I was gonna have to find my passion in what I want to do in my professional life, but still kind of Jake, finding that time and to be what do I do with that now is definitely a weird one, and I'm still working it out, and also working out how I plan to work out rather than just having to be at the pool at a certain time. I'm in charge of figuring that out, which I'm finding hard. But yeah, it's weird for sure not being with the team all the time and seeing everyone on such a regular basis.
Yeah, I'm curious, you mentioned about working out, and you guys, the way you had to treat your bodies, you kind of would maybe get beat up a little bit with all that yardage, and then, as you said, Kelly, you had to find ways to recover and get your naps in and eat right. Is that hard mentally to not be kind of pounding that routine? A lot of us sort of amateur regular folk, we get on ourselves if we can't get to the gym enough times, per week, and we don't feel like ourselves. But you guys were working out at a level that, we can't really relate to. And what's it like when it stops in terms of energy to go back to the pool, dealing with your, does your body feel just flat, compared to the energy you felt? I'm curious, Jake, you're nodding. Maybe I'll shoot that over to you. What's it like to not be working out the way you're used to?
Yeah, one thing that swimming's provided me, and I'm sure Millie and Kelly can also agree, is just structure, where it's like when you go to practice, I don't really think about it as working out. I think about it as working towards my goals and what I want to do. So for me, I've been going to the gym and like the apartment down like that way. And it's not the same because I'm running on a treadmill and I don't care about running at all, but it's more for like spending my time and staying active. So when you go to the pool and you do those hard workouts and you train all those hours, it's for the end goal and not only for yourself, but also for your teammates. So that's one thing that I've definitely struggled with.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely miss the structure. And at first when swimming stops, it was really nice just not having to work out. But now it's definitely like I start to have that itch to get back in the water again and try working out with like purpose.
Just before I turn it over to you, Kelly, do you go to get in the water? Do you swim anymore?
No, not as of right now.
Not as of now.
I definitely want to take a lot of time off. I was really happy with my results at the end of the season, and I just want to mentally recover and really have the full drive and the full motivation to get back in the water at full force and have 100% of my effort there every single day. And that's just not where I am right now. And I don't think it's going to be where I am for a little bit.
That makes sense to me. How about you, Kelly? What's your thoughts about this subject?
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely like my older brother gave me a lot of really good advice about this. Like he used to swim at Notre Dame and he stopped about 2 years ago. But like when I initially got back from my last meet, I was like, oh, I got to keep going. Like I don't want to like I just like the next week I was like, I'm just gonna work out. Like that's like endorphins. It'll make me happy. It's something I can do. But I found like when I was working out, like it made me like depressed. Like I was like, oh my gosh, like I even came back from a workout one day. I just like started sobbing. I was like, I miss swimming so much. Like this sucks. Like just going to the gym and working out for nothing, not having a coach there telling me what to do, and like not having like my best friends around me all the time. So I was talking to him about it, and he was like, you know what, Cal, like the best advice I could give you right now is just like give into exactly what you want to do. Like if you don't want to work out, do not work out. So ever since he said that, like I haven't been working out. So like I worked out that first week, and like since then it's been like 2 months now. I'm just like totally taking a break. I mean, I feel like eventually I hope like I get that desire back to, like get back in shape or like train for something else, like maybe, but it's just hard because swimming was like it wasn't even a workout. Like that wasn't even like what I like considered like exactly what Jake said. Like it never felt like, oh, like I gotta get to work out. Like it was like just totally different than that. It was like going to be doing something that I loved with people I loved and to achieve a goal. And to not have that goal in like purpose behind what I'm doing, like just going for a jog, it's not something I'm used to. And I think I like just have to be patient with myself. And that's kind of what I'm doing now. And right now I'm just like enjoying my time with my friends and doing what they want to do and just hanging around and like that kind of thing. And maybe when I get home and I'm away from here, it'd be easier. Cause like when I was home over the summers before, it was like, like I was training and trying to keep in shape for swimming and for the season, but it wasn't like in this Villanova environment where it was like so concentrated.
Right. That's interesting. You wonder whether it'll shift a little bit when you head home, which I assume is pretty soon.
Yeah, I think like a week from Friday.
Okay, so pretty soon. How about for you, Millie? What's it been like for you? You mentioned, I think, once to me that you did go back maybe a time or two to the pool.
Yeah.
But tell us what's on your mind about this subject.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like what Kelly said. Like, I don't have a purpose for working out now. It's just to keep fit and to keep my body moving. And like, I know that's something that makes me happy and gets those endorphins and stuff going. But having to do that alone and also having to like structure things myself, I think has been the hardest thing for me. Is in like, first of all, why am I working out? What do I want to do with it? Is it just to keep me healthy and keep me fit, which my body still is from my swimming? Or is it like, am I training to do something else now? Like, I feel like for me, I have to have a goal. Otherwise, I'm just like, well, this is pointless.
Yeah, well, it makes sense because of how goal oriented you guys are and have had to be, for years, long before Villanova ever,
Yeah.
came to the picture.
Yeah. So it's kind of like Kelly, like I'm working out. Like I've not been in the pool now for, it was like her, like the first couple of weeks afterwards, I was like, I'll be in the pool, I'll be swimming, I'll be doing stuff in the pool every day. Like that's what I have loved doing for the last 15 years. And like now I don't have that. So I'll just keep doing it. And then I took myself out and was like, am I being realistic with myself right now? And the answer was no. So I haven't been in the pool since then. I've been like, okay, so this is your chance to explore other things that you might enjoy and find other hobbies rather than being so tied to the sport that I've loved doing, but I've had to do for so long.
Is it the case that I assume there's really no preparation for any of this? There's no real conversation about this. You guys are figuring it out on your own, or maybe you're talking, to each other about it. Do you think, let me come back to you, Kelly, do you think schools like Villanova and plenty of others should do more for student athletes in this regard? Or you think, look, hey, this is such as life and everyone has to move on at some point, and that's not necessarily their role?
I mean, I honestly think that like especially initially when it ended, that was like some of the hardest weeks of my life. Like I was not prepared for it at all. Like I thought for sure it'd feel good to be done. Like you don't have to worry about this massive weight on your shoulders, but all of a sudden you're just like, who am I even? You know what I mean? It's like this big, massive gaping hole in your life. And you're just like, what the hell? And I mean, honestly, I think there was really like nobody prepared me for it. Like I couldn't even prepare myself because I didn't realize like how much it meant to me until it was over. Kind of like you don't know what you got till it's gone. I'd say like the only person who really helped me out was like Laura. She kind of prepared me for it a little bit, our coach, but I just never really like considered it to be what it was, I guess.
Yeah. And Millie, would you agree that not a lot of preparation for this? And do you think it's a role that schools should take on, which is preparing student athletes more for this transition?
Yeah, now that I'm in it, I think I'm thinking about like Villanova especially says that like you're a wildcat for life. But in the student athlete world, it feels like you're a wildcat and you support and you do your time and you do all these competitions and bring all these things back for the university. And then like as soon as you're done with your time, it's like, okay, now figure it out and kind of go into the world and work out what it's like to be someone who's not a student athlete when that's been your life for the last however long.
Yeah.
So I definitely think there needs to be some more support from somewhere to just kind of at least guide or warn people
Yeah.
in the transition out of this.
Yeah. It's interesting. The United States Olympic Committee, unlike other Olympic committees in other countries, also doesn't really prepare our Olympic athletes much, although it's slowly changing, for life post Olympics, which you guys can relate to in the sense that all you're doing is training and all you're doing is thinking about these big goals, and then all of a sudden the Olympics are over, like your seasons are over, and sort of now what? And I've had several athletes who've really struggled post Olympics because they've kind of I went to a presentation by the Canadian Olympic team, and you should see what they do. They get them on LinkedIn, and they get them trying to like visit certain businesses that they think they might have some interest in, in the years leading up to the games, just to poke around a little bit and say, oh, these are some options for you. This is what this business is really like behind the scenes if you were ever interested in it. It just makes me think about the United States maybe in general isn't as savvy about these things as they should be. And maybe that brings me to the topic of mental health. May is Mental Health Month. We're recording this during Mental Health Month because you guys are saying that it's been really hard. It's been weighing on you since the season's over, trying to figure out who you are, trying to figure out how to stay active, what your purpose is. I guess, Jake, if I turn it over to you, I guess the question is, and maybe it's a bad question, and you could come back and say, I'm not sure I like that question. What's the connection between mental health and performance? Like what comes to mind for you if I said, how are they related, at least in your world or in your opinion? Give me some thoughts about that if you can.
Yeah, no, this is a great question, and actually something that ties back to what we were talking about earlier, and something that I've just been reflecting on lately is that with swimming, unlike football or any other team sport like hockey, swimming's unbelievably measurable. So when you're in season and you're in a dual meet and you're doing the 200 freestyle or the 50 free or the 400 IM, you touch the wall and you know exactly how well you did. And for me, that's huge because it's like, oh, now I'm eating right and I'm getting enough sleep and I'm taking naps when I should be and I'm training well. So there's just so much immediate feedback with swimming where you could play a game of football and be like, oh, I had some blocks, I had some tackles, whereas swimming's just, I went X time in this race, and you can compare that to previous races, and you can also compare that to where you want to be in the future. So without that right now, it's been really difficult because in life, you just don't get immediate feedback from doing things. And so to tie it back to the question you just asked, I think mentally, swimming definitely has determined like how I feel about myself in season. If I have a bad dual meet, it might screw up my week because all of a sudden I'm overthinking how I should be eating or how I should be sleeping. So it's definitely a curse. Like it's definitely a benefit and a curse because when I do well, it's like, oh, I'm doing great. This is all I need right now. But when I'm not doing too well, sometimes it can just deteriorate my mental health just a little bit. I don't know if you guys want to add on to that at all.
Kelly, anything you would want to add on to that?
Yeah, Jake, I think you put it really well. Like I find that I swim fastest when I'm having fun and I'm surrounded by the people I love. And that was what was so wonderful about Villanova was like I felt so much support from my team and I felt so much like support from my coaches and from like the athletic staff. And like when things were going well in the pool, it was because I was like thriving in that environment. But if there was like some sort of external thing going on that maybe was like affecting me, whether like I was super stressed out, I missed home, something was going on with my family, like, and I was feeling pretty down, like I would always kind of feel like I wasn't being the best version of myself for my teammates kind of. And then like I would definitely get like kind of anxious about my performance in the pool. Or and then even on the flip side, part of what Jake you were saying was like swimming's so objective. So like there's certain races that maybe I've done well in the past and I know exactly where I would need to be for my goal and I've been like so close to that but not quite there and I know exactly what like how many seconds I need to drop, but because I know that it's like Jake said, a blessing and a curse. Like yeah, you know that, but at the same time you put so much more pressure on yourself to achieve it that it's like sometimes it just becomes impossible for me. Like it happened with one of my events over the course of my college career. Like I swam lights out in a freshman year, but ever since then I couldn't get back down, so I had to find a way to be good at other things. And like it definitely like it's just like interesting sport, I guess. I mean it can be very black and white, which kind of sucks sometimes.
Well, yeah, and I always think, there are other sports where time is like in running, where time is, but when I think about you guys with your head, staring at a ceiling or staring at a line in the pool, it's so different. Runners could go out for a run together and chit chat and that sort of thing. And I always do think of swimming as being so particularly unique, even from that social sort of point of view. So you're both saying, and then I'll turn it to you, Millie, you're both, Jake and Kelly, saying, it comes down to sometimes just a few seconds, and sometimes when you hit it right, you feel great. And of course, when you don't, you wonder, and it could really make it really tough on you. I guess, Millie, I want you to add onto that. I'm sure it's probably pretty similar to you, for you rather, because you're a competitive swimmer as well. But talk to me about like the mental health part of it. I mean, did you find, whether you could speak for yourself or for general teammates, that people's mental health really took a toll over the course of this past season?
I think this season has been super interesting because it's the first one we've had back properly since COVID. And I think for me, looking back on it, I didn't realize how much of a toll those 2 years had. like junior year was the best year of my swimming career, hands down. And I was like, oh, I'll just come back. Like senior year is a bit funny because it's been through COVID. So like I'll let that one go, which is why I took a fifth year. And then I came back my fifth year and was like, all right, I'm just gonna be right back to that, get back to it. Everything's gonna be fine. And I'm gonna be swimming as good as I was then. And it didn't happen like that. And I think that was hard for me to be like, well, nothing's different right now from when it was 2 years ago. Like I'm swimming all the time I normally am. I'm training as hard, if not better, than what I was doing junior year. Why am I not doing as well? So I think, and I've also had that from other teammates too, that like no one really understood how much of an impact COVID had. And it's hard to kind of put together where that happened and how that happened. But
Right.
I think that comeback from having so much time off and so much time out of, like Jake said, the structure that we've been given has so much more of an impact on our lives than we can ever realize. And it does, I think the mental health side of it, like I think about it, it's like if COVID didn't happen, where would I be now? Would I be so much better than what I finished up on? And it's that kind of, if I could take it back or if I could change it, what would it be?
Right.
And mental health point, like I can't do that. So
Right.
that's hard
Right.
for me
It's a
to,
question you won't ever know the answer to, right?
yeah.
How about during the season, whether it's well, let's use this season, as you're sort of saying, Millie, it was a particularly tough season coming back from COVID for everybody. In terms of taking care of your mental health, you may not have a great dual meet, as you're saying, Jake, or for whatever reason, as Kelly's saying, something may be going on in your lives, you know, whether it's your family, it could be your grades, it could be something at school with a friend. Jake, were there things that you did or tried to do that looking back now, you're like, those really were really key to my success this past season in terms of your mental health? I'm talking about.
Yeah. I've done a lot of journaling. Still do a lot of journaling. That's something that I always know that I can kind of go back to, and it's always there for me. And I also just do it because I love to go back and read past journal entries. And I also started seeing a therapist in maybe December, but that definitely helps a lot. Just kind of like talking over a lot of things. And sometimes I don't think I really realized how much of a grasp swimming had on my life and like my mental health. But for the most part, I kind of just, I'd have a bad dual meet or a bad swim or something, and I just kind of put my head down, and sometimes it just allowed to take control of me, whether I liked it or not. I would, change how I acted or change my choices of like when I'd go to bed and stuff like that. Just because I'm sure Kelly and Millie would agree that you just care so much, you're kind of willing to sacrifice anything at that point, even if it means your own mental health. So,
Yeah, if I could ask you a little bit about the journaling, just in terms of like the structure of it, like, do you just write kind of what's ever on your mind? Do you
yeah.
write about just swim stuff? Do you just, give us a little bit of a sense of how you do it?
It's a lot of everything, mostly school, athletics, social life kind of stuff. I've planned my week in there sometimes when I'm feeling overwhelmed. I doodle in there sometimes when I'm bored in class. A lot goes into that journal, but it's definitely helped. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, and you continue to do it. Did I hear you right? You're continuing
Yeah.
now because it's just part of your life
Mhm.
now. And okay, great. How about for you, Kelly? Are there things that you tried to do or did do that you think were helpful?
Definitely. So I think like, what Millie was saying, this season was definitely unique with mental health. I'll say for me, it was maybe the first time I ever really noticed my own mental health in terms of my performance in swimming, mainly because of Millie and like all that you're doing for our program with like peak performance and stuff. Because like Jake and Millie can agree, it's like hard to articulate, but how mental the sport of swimming is, it can be like I can tell you before I get on the blocks whether or not it's going to go well, just based off of where I'm at. And I can't even tell you like what it is besides a gut feeling, but it's like something's there. And we did a few retreats with David Walsh that helped a lot. And just kind of like for the first time being cognizant of it, and trying to like articulate my feelings in terms of swimming, because that's not something I've always thought to do. And honestly, like Jake, I bought a journal during the last year, like whatever during the pandemic, because things were so tough as they were for most people. And I started like writing down how I was feeling every, like, especially at night when I was like feeling super overwhelmed, like couldn't fall asleep. I would just like write pages and pages. And then like Jake says, looking back on them and stuff. But I kind of like ditched the journal for a little while during the middle of the season, but then right, like probably 2 weeks prior to Big East, I like journaled every single night and like pretty much only about swimming and even a little bit about like how it was ending and like how I thought maybe it would make me feel. And then like I remember like when I made NCAAs and it was like I finally achieved this like thing that I've been dying to achieve for like 4 years now. And I remember just like writing down and just being like, well, holy shit. And just like kind of processing things through that was super helpful. But then and even up on like retire, like being done with swimming, like looking back on those things and being like, wow, like I really was that invested in something and like I cared that much about something like that. Is pretty like it's cool to look back on, but at the same time it leaves me like a little sad because I'm like, wow, I wish I could have that again, kind of.
Yeah. Can you say, before I turn to you, Millie, what you think, I know it's hard to know, the journaling did for you? Do you think it just was like a good brain dump? Do you think it gave you some perspective? How would you describe what you think it did for you?
I think it like brought like awareness kind of like to like what I was feeling and like made me articulate it. Because a lot of the times I just don't deal with my emotions, especially like when it's something that I care about a lot. Like I remember like I like one of like the big goals for myself was like to make NCAAs all year long. And all of sophomore year and like second half of freshman year too. But I would never really talk about it. Like I never wanted to address it because I thought the second I would like bring it up or even let myself think about it, like it was the second I wasn't going to achieve it. But I remember, Millie, you said in the beginning of the year, one of our peak performance sessions, you were like, why are we going to have goals but not share them with each other? Because we're the people who are going to help each other like achieve them. And I was like, you make a good point. Like, it's not that big of a deal to have a goal. Like, like I can just like, and like to address how I was feeling about it and to like articulate it and to just be cognizant of what was going on in my mind, because that is the biggest factor of like how you perform in the water. Like I can tell you for a fact, like I had seasons where I've done everything in my power. I've checked all the boxes of my training. I've done workouts I never thought I could complete. I lifted a heavy weight that I didn't think I could achieve or whatever. But I've still done shit in the water. And like, I'm just like, well, what the, like, sometimes it can be so confusing, but it's all because like, I wasn't necessarily like feeling really good about myself or like, I wasn't really mentally there,
Wow. And by becoming more aware and just getting it on paper somehow helped you breathe a little bit better and yeah, presumably maybe even perform a little bit better, I guess is what you're saying.
Yeah, I really think it was like the awareness that like was like we talked about it this season, which is the first time that's ever happened. Like I was never like freshman, sophomore, junior year. We never spoke about the mental side of swimming, which is, I mean, looking back on it, I'm like, well, why didn't we? Because it's everything, like it has such a huge factor.
Wow. Thank you. So how about for you, Millie? What were some of the tools that you had, Kat, in your toolkit? I know you also played a role with the team. Maybe that would help you as much as it was helping them, but I'll let you answer that question.
Yeah. So there was a couple of things actually. I think this is the first season Rick like came to terms with the fact of like a mental health day. And so we'd had multiple talks even through the beginning of the season, but like, if you need time, we can give you it. We know you're not being lazy. We know that you're not just trying to cut out of practice. If you need time, then we need to hear you say that. And therefore like mental health days are totally fine. And that's the first time he'd vocalized that. He was like, oh, I just thought everyone knew that. And we were like, well, no, that's not how this works. Like we're here to grind every day as much as we can, as work as hard as we can. Like no one's told us we can stop doing that. So that was a huge one, I think, for me and a bunch of us on the team, like, oh, wait, yeah, if he says it, then it actually means that it's real.
And did people not take advantage in the negative side? Did people use that time if they needed it and vocalize that they needed it?
Yeah, we had a couple of people who had to have some days off or just take some time for themselves and do what they needed to do above being a student athlete, but just for their own person, and came back stronger and better off for it. So that was super, I think, nice to see on our end that those things are real and those things are helpful, and people need time. But I think for me, like the running the peak performance for our team not only helped like fuel my passion for doing this and being part of this profession, but also like it helped me vocalize my emotions. And the first 3 years of my college career, like I didn't want to show that I was struggling. And coming senior year to my grad year, I think I was able to embrace my emotions more and learn that it's okay to cry and sometimes for absolutely no reason that you can give, but just because it just feels, you just need to release it somehow.
Yeah.
And I think through doing peak performance, not only was I expressing that to people, but I was also expressing that to myself, to be like, you can be a part of this too. And think learning like the more human I become with myself, the better my swimming gets, because I can then use the emotion to swim better and to push myself harder, but then to know when is time for myself and when I need that little extra boost. So yeah, I think that was, like Kelly said, it was helpful both on not only for the team, I hope, but also like for me as someone who's running that, to be like, this is also okay for you to do too.
Yeah. And do you think by the end of the season, Rick, your coach or your coaches felt like, wow, this is something we want to continue?
Yeah, so he's asked me to come back next year and keep doing it. And I also think maybe Kelly and Jake, you can talk about it too, but our coaches talked more about mental health than they ever have this year. And talked about like emotion side of things, and like that they're struggling sometimes, and that's just how it happens. And that's like, they're human too. They're not just coaches who their entire lives are run around us. And so they also too, like I had conversations with them saying, they're like, I'm struggling today. Like today's not a good day for me. But I'm here and I'm coming to work and I'll do my best for you guys today. But I'm going to be honest with you, like this is not the best day that I've had. And I think that was nice to model for the team that everyone's human, right? So we don't have to keep grinding.
Yeah, that's really striking. It does bring up for me, and you feel free to talk about it as much or as little of this as you want. I know when I first met Millie and we were talking about working at Green Psych and mental health, and Millie had talked about that you guys had a teammate that had died by suicide, and I'm wondering, I guess, the impact, if Jake, if I turn to you, what the impact of that loss was like for you. What do you think it was like for the team? Is it again, you guys describe, you spend so much time together, you train so intensely, together, you travel on buses together, you're really team dinners. What was that like, Jake? If I could ask you about that experience.
Yeah, definitely a tough scenario, but I was never too close with the person who took their own life, just because I was only a freshman on the team. So I think Millie would probably be better suited to answer this question.
He was in Kelly's class too, so.
Oh, and Kelly, Millie or Kelly, either of you, if you had a little more connection there.
It definitely took an impact on our class. When somebody takes their own life, it's like it affects everyone in different ways. Everyone had a very different relationship with him too, and it really wasn't an easy time at all. And I think that everyone can contest to that. Yeah, it definitely created a few dynamics that, like, I mean, I don't think we've even addressed to this day, but I don't know, like, it's definitely was a tough time.
I would say, like, from my perspective, the hardest part was just being a freshman and having that happen, and watching like a lot of the older guys that I really looked up to, how it affected them. That was definitely the hardest part for me. It's because these are these, big bad juniors and seniors on the team, and all they're the cool guys. They're so cool, and then all of a sudden one day they're just so broken down. That was definitely the hardest part for me. It was like, oh, these guys are invincible. How can they be like, be so affected by this? But
yeah. Oh yeah, I could only imagine seeing that as a freshman. How about Millie, anything you want to add to that?
I think the hardest part for me when we lost Callum was the conflicting messages I was getting, not only from myself, but from like staff and faculty and in ways that I should be dealing with it. And like my body was saying, you just need to stop and just have some time to yourself and figure out what's going on in your head. And then there was the other part of it that was like, just get back to training. The quicker you get back into it, the quicker you start going and you get on with that grind, the easier it's going to be, because you're going to be a normal, kind of your normal process and your normal structure.
Right.
And then the other side of me was like, well, you can't just, this is a huge deal. Like, this is our community. This is our team. He was part of our family. And like, he was one of my closest friends. And it's just like, you can't just like skim over that fact that he's just kind of gone, and we'll just keep on going. And like Kelly said, I don't think that's ever really been addressed.
That you think is sort of still out there as do you know now, years later, Millie or Kelly or Jake even, what you would do differently, if anything? I'm talking about after this event took place. Would you have taken more time? Would you have taken less time, or who knows?
Yeah, maybe would have seen a counselor a few more times. I mean, that was sophomore year, and that was the worst swim season of my life. I mean, I guess those two things probably aren't, like I'm sure it weighed on me more than I realized it did. And I mean, like, I think that like a lot of, I think there was like a lot of things that could have been, I'm dark, sorry. I think a lot of things that could have been handled differently then. Like, there definitely could have been a lot more support. And I mean, who's to say that, like, I think that there's been so much more light brought to the conversation of mental health. Like, I've seen it like just become so much better over my 4 years, and that was like in the beginning. And I think that maybe, like, God forbid, I mean, not even to go there, but like if something awful happens again, like I really do have faith that like we as a collective, and like just even conversations like this, where like I think that even my own awareness to my own mental health, like I think things have just gotten better. And like I think it like, yeah, now that maybe it's a maturity thing, like, yeah, I definitely would have handled things differently than I did back then. But I mean, like, yeah, I just think I probably would have tried to be more cognizant of how I was feeling.
Millie, anything you would do differently if?
I think vocalizing, like standing from a position I'm in now, like looking back on it would be like, you just should have spoken about what was going on. It's easy to say, but in the moment I was like, I don't even know how I'm feeling or why I'm feeling the way I am. So like, how can I even reach out for help?
Right.
And when I'm meant to be a student athlete who's meant to be like, I have training to do, I have competitions to do, how can I just take time and try and talk to someone about something I don't even know what's going on?
Right.
So it was that just fight between both sides of me, that like, you need help and you need help. And then the other side of it is like, well, how, why, how is that going to fit into your schedule? How can you even vocalize what's going on?
Right. Right. And what if you get very emotional and it upsets you even more? Then I'm not, then it's harder to get back in the pool and kind of grind it out. I don't know if that's how you thought, but I could imagine that could be.
No, it's exactly how I was. Like, if I take time to even acknowledge these emotions and deal with them, then it's time that I'm not spending training, or time that I'm not spending grinding, as we said so many times.
Right. As the three of you, I'm sure know, there has been just too many losses in the student athlete world to suicide, and of course, seems like more lately than ever. And there's a lot of talk, and there should be more talk about how to help prevent, if we can prevent anybody else taking their own life. But I'm sure you guys also think about the students who are on the team of the person who took their own life, and how, just like you guys, what kind of support is there for them? What kind of support is there for the coaches? I'd like to think that at some of these bigger programs, there is, but you guys are at a big program too, and there's limited resources. Sometimes there's limited availability. Sometimes we have the problem in certain schools of the counseling center isn't necessarily tuned into the athlete mindset, and would say, well, what's the big deal? Just take some time off, and not appreciate, as you guys have just said, that's not always so easy. Is there anything that any of you want to say about what you've been reading and seeing in the news about these student athletes who've taken their lives? There's a lot of people wanting to talk, rightly so, about, are there more things that could be done on campus? Are there more things that could be done for teams? Does, in just that spirit that maybe we need more in the world in terms of mental health, does something come to mind? It's what you think that more should look like? Jake?
Yeah. I think that I wouldn't say this is an uncommon trend or like an uncommon saying, but it's, student athlete. But I know Amelia said this before, but we have to put the person before the student and the athlete. And oftentimes throughout our collegiate careers, we're being programmed to, race and go to class and sleep and eat. And then it's like, well, where do I fit like me time in there? Where do I get to do what I like to do? And oftentimes I feel like now that I am in this off-season period where I'm not swimming, I'm like, what is me time? What do I like to do? And so I oftentimes find myself like on social media a lot more, just kind of mindlessly scrolling, which is just definitely not good. But it's also like, I don't have hobbies. I don't really do much else other than swim, eat, and sleep. So I think that it's definitely important to raise awareness about the conversation about who are you without your sport, right? So if you were to, God forbid this ever happens, but if I were to blow my ACL and I could never swim another day in my life, what would I do? I don't really know. I can't answer you that, which I also feel like is a problem. So I think it's just raising that, having that conversation about being a person and realizing what you like to do outside your sport and what fills you with enjoyment outside of your sport. Because once you can't compete or you're not competing anymore, I think it's really important to kind of figure out, well, who am I without swimming?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Kelly, what comes to mind for you?
I totally agree with Jake. Like, I think everything that was really well said too. And I mean, it's hard because there's definitely been times over my 4 years where I felt like so spread thin. And I just remember like at times last year, I was like something needs to like I can't keep taking all this stuff on, and like I just getting like so flipped out of myself. And I mean, I honestly then like part of me is like, that's just nature of being a student athlete. Like, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to study nursing, and I wanted to be able to be in a program where I could swim fast and like all of these things, and just trying to balance it all. But sometimes it just got to be too much, and I just kind of like have breakdowns, and I don't know like what else could have been done or what I maybe would have done differently on those days, especially like during my junior year, even sophomore year, maybe even this year, every year. But I think just like having these conversations really helps, and like talking because like it's funny, like I mean, Jake, Millie, you're the two people I talk to like about my mental health probably more than most, but like it's not often that you are like in pit and you're just like, oh yeah, like I just cried my eyes out in the bathroom 10 minutes ago. And just like being more aware of it, and like just knowing that we're all going through it together, because it's like there are days where we all feel it. And like I think to have conversations where we kind of talk about the weight of being a student athlete, and then like talking about who we are outside of the sport are definitely very important.
Yeah, and you can use more of it. I mean, you and all the teams around could use. I get that point, Kelly, where you could use more of those kinds of conversations. Maybe starting people's right before when they come on campus, basically, right? That's I always liked. I think it was University of Michigan basketball team. I could have that wrong, but this is probably not true with a lot of teams. Like the first day, first practice, they introduce the team to the sports psych or to the mental health counselor who's going to potentially be working with them. They see his or her face, or their faces. They get to meet them. They get to hear a little spiel by them. And I thought, boy, that really says at least a lot that they're taking practice time, first practice to say, these are part of the family too, part of the team, so to speak. From the jump. So, how about for you, Millie? Thoughts about what else could be done? I'm sure you have plenty of thoughts, and I know you're trying to execute them. It sounds like with very good feedback from your team. But what comes to mind?
Yeah, well, you guys all know that. Oh, my whole message is like we just need more people, more support, more resources. And it's nice to hear it from Jake and from Kelly too, that like they're also on that. It's not just me and my world of and this passion, but I think the beginning of it is just starting that conversation. And I'm glad that my message has got to Jake of being like a person first. Because a lot of people that I've spoken to that's not even a consideration. They're like, I'm a student and I'm an athlete, and therefore I do school and I train, and that's it. That's all my life is. And it gets to that, okay, so what happens when that's done? Because it will end eventually. That's just the way that life is, and the process that we're in. So like, what do you do when that's gone? Who are you? What do you like? What brings you joy? What do you do for your self-care? So I think like both of you said, bringing that conversation and bring that awareness to teams, and to also send the message like, it's okay to talk about that stuff. It's okay to talk about stuff that's not school and that's not training. Because
you need coaches like you do to say, let's right, because without the coaches blessing and without the coaches of facilitating, it's a whole lot more difficult to get this off the ground, right? So you need coaches who also, as you're saying, don't think that this is just like an excuse to complain or to take it easy, to see it as part of the training picture, not like a separate thing that only shows up when there's a problem.
Yeah And to take it as seriously as like physical health, right? We go and get our shoulders ice taped, recovery boots on. We can do that within 3 seconds of something happening to our bodies. But as soon as someone starts to say something's wrong with their mental health, everyone's like, whoa, let's hush for a second. Let's find you the right people to talk to. And you can kind of go over there and talk about it, rather than bringing it into the here and now and saying, okay, it's great that you are willing to speak about that. And like, you're not alone in thinking all those things, because everyone else is going through those things too. So let's find you some support and let's help you do that. And showing that vulnerability and starting that conversation.
I can also add to that. I'll be the first to admit that when we had those meetings on Friday, I'm so like regimented that I'm like, why are we doing this? I need to swim, right? I need to be in the water. This is dumb. But at the same time, it's almost like prehab for your brain, right? Like we go over the very basic stuff. It's like, well, how do I balance all these things going on in my life and also include time for me? It's like, yeah, I've been doing this for 10 years, Millie. Thank you. I know how to do this. But at the same time, it's like, well, what happens when you're struggling? Like, what tools do you have to like go back to when you are struggling? So I think it was very important in a sense where it's like, yeah, you might be doing perfectly great right now. That's fine. But when you are having a poor day or a poor week or a poor month, what can you fall back onto? So I feel like that was a very important part of those meetings on Friday.
Mm-hmm. It's like maintenance, right?
What?
It's like maintenance.
Yeah, very much so.
I was gonna say too, I feel like freshman year is like one of the hardest times of people's lives, and like because you kind of you're balancing student athlete the whole picture for the first time, but you're also balancing being away from home for the first time. And I think maybe like hopefully the freshmen this year, I mean, I can't speak for them obviously, but like, I hope that they felt that maybe their mental health is taken care of a little bit more, or at least brought to their attention a little bit more than maybe like our experiences were. But I think that is like something huge too that tends to kind of go under the radar. Because I look back on my freshman year, I'm like, I did not know what was going on, like in the pool, in school, in my own head. Like I missed home. That was pretty much all I knew. I was like navigating, like you kind of walk onto this team and everyone's like super, super close. And you're just like, I just met these people. Like I miss my like friends that I've known for 18 years who are like at school in Texas right now. Like, you know what I mean? So I think that's something else that's like I think just like initially starting it from the beginning,
Yeah.
like especially taking care of this freshman.
Yeah, I think we'll see those kind of that initial process with the freshmen definitely pay dividends in the future. Just because I know I was struggling very much so my freshman year. And I just hope that they know that that is a part of the conversation. Your mental health is just very important, just as much as your physical health is. So just like planting that initial seed going forward, where it's like if you need to take a break, you can.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that wasn't always an option, especially my freshman year.
Mhm.
Well, listen, I've taken up a lot of your time, but this has been so pleasurable. I feel like I want to keep going. You guys are wonderful representatives of yourselves, of your school, of your program. Really, you're all just impressive in terms of I could tell, who you are and your willingness. I appreciate to just share and be open here. And look, if there's ways that we can keep the conversation going. I see a great podcast right here. I see this like podcast post right here. I mean, you guys could set the table for a lot of other people to keep talking, because you live it and breathe it. And so really thanks so much. I will, through Millie or whatever, keep you guys posted on the recording and ways that we can use your words and your experiences to help others, which I appreciate is sort of why we're all doing this, which is, what it's like. There are plenty of young men and women out there just like you who don't know where to focus, and you can give them some thoughts and they can see that they're not alone, all those kinds of things. So thank you very much. Any last thoughts or anything on anyone's mind, or anything I should have asked them that we'll need to save for part 2 or for the next
Honestly,
one?
thank you. It felt good to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, terrific. I'm glad. As you guys were saying, it's a kind of a weird time, a difficult time. So maybe just sharing is, in the spirit of sharing, is helpful. So maybe, who knows? Maybe we'll do a part 2 at some point and check in on you guys in a little bit down the road.
And they're in finals week too, so thank you guys for taking time in finals week.
Wow. Yes. Just finals. No, especially thank you for, I know how finals week can be. So thank you. Thanks, Millie, for helping coordinate all of this. Congrats on your seasons and for finishing up in the next week or so. And who knows, hopefully we'll cross paths again down the road.
And Kelly's graduating too.
Yeah.
And congratulations to Kelly. Is Texas your next stop, or you're not going back to Texas, or no?
No, that's not my hometown. That's just where my best friend from home moved.
Oh.
I'm from Connecticut. Yeah.
Oh, Connecticut.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you heading back there, or are you still trying to figure that out?
Yeah, it's still in the works. I'm heading back there for the summer, and then we'll see where the next moves take me. I mean, nothing's set in stone.
Got it. Where in Connecticut are you?
Greenwich.
Oh, you're in Greenwich. Sure.
Mhm.
I'm going to be going and speaking at I think it's Greenwich Academy in June, to the coaches, actually.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
So I'm going to be in that area, and I'm from Manhattan, so I know Greenwich is
Yeah.
not
too far at all.
not too far away. All right, you guys. Thank you again.
Thanks so much.
All right, I'm going to be
Thank you,
checking in
guys.
on you guys, and now I feel like I want to know what's going to happen next week. I'll be checking. All right, thanks,
Okay,
guys.
bye.
Thank you.
Have a great one. Yep,
Bye.
bye-bye. Well, thank you, Millie.
You're welcome.
Um,
Aren't they lovely? They're such nice people to chat to.
yeah, times 1,000. Yes,
Yeah.
lovely. I wasn't kidding where I felt like, we could just keep talking, and they seem so comfortable and they're so articulate,
Yeah.
like you, that yes, I could see why the three of you are all so close.
Yeah. And it's like
Wow.
Kelly said, like us three have all sat down on multiple occasions and just chat and been like, none of us are doing great right now. Let's just sit and just chat about it, which has been so nice, and which is why I thought they'd be great to speak about this, is because they're so open about it.
No, you nailed it, and the conversation just flowed, and I'm yes, thoroughly impressed by all of you guys, and I like to hear. I want to know, what it's like now, post, and what it was like during the season, and you know, you and I could brainstorm about the best ways to take advantage of the, you know, all your guys' comments and advice and thoughts, and you know, we could think about how we want to best use it. And you know, some of the comments like prehab for the brain and developing the person, which you guys talked about, and you know, this idea like I don't have hobbies.
Yeah.
I could relate to that. I remember when my daughter finished, you know, after running, you know, 3 seasons, you know, every year of high school and then every year of college, you know, so like, and then being like, right. I remember her saying, I don't like, what else do I do?
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of good stuff that I think will come out of this. So
Yeah, so I'm thinking I was gonna get them to send like a headshot or some kind of picture that they like. Do you want it to be in Villanova gear or just whatever they want?
I think in Villanova gear would be good, and I'd like to get them something or send them something, you know, to thank them for their time. We could talk about that too. We can either send them something green psyche, or we could just, you know, get them something different. But I'd like to certainly, you know, acknowledge that you know, their time.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And I think that you said podcast, and because obviously Kelly's leaving, so I don't know how likely that is, but as using quotes and stuff, even going forward, like Jake's going into a senior year, that's a big deal. I know